Hello there. Welcome to Women on the Move, where we meet fabulous female authors and we talk about their latest books, we talk about their careers, and we talk about their lives. I am Marjorie Schuster, coordinator of literary events here at Temple Emanu-El Streicker Center. And today, I have the great fun and the pleasure of moderating a fun discussion between Susan Isaacs and Marilyn Simon Rothstein. Thank you, as always, to the Samuel I. Newhouse Foundation for their support of this series. And a little housekeeping, please write your questions in the chat feature of Zoom, and we will get to as many as we can. Now, it is my great pleasure to welcome Susan and Marilyn. Hello there. Hi, Susan. Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
Hi there. So thank you very much for both being with us today. This will be a really nice conversation. So Susan, I think we'll start with you. So everybody is familiar with Susan. She is the author of 14 books. Each one is a total joy. And I believe I'm right in saying that each one was on the New York Times bestseller list. Is that accurate?
Yes, it may be momentarily, but yes.
And 4 of your books have become films. Terrific. Now, the book we are here to, let me get it, to discuss today is called, let me get it in the light here, Takes One to Know One. So we'll start with you. And can you tell us a little bit about the world you've created in this book?
Yes, well, I wanted to do a series of mysteries with the same character and have her grow as the series went along, which I had never done. So I started with Takes One to Know One, and she's an ex-FBI agent, really burned out by being in anti-terrorism. And she marries, nice Jewish guy, lives in the suburbs, adopts his daughter. He's a widower. A gorgeous, finally relaxing life. And she doesn't like it. She's not happy. She's used to adventure. She's used to tension. And she starts noticing something odd in her weekly suburban lunch group. And it goes on from there, and it really becomes a life and death situation for her being Corey Gellis. And the next book is coming out in May, and I'm already writing the third.
Wow. Great. Yeah. Well, we're going to hold that right there just for a moment.
Sure.
We're going to show Marilyn's book, but I'm crazy to leave you. A little hard to show it in my background. So this is Marilyn Simon Rothstein, and Marilyn has written 3 books, each one funnier than the last. Husbands and Other Sharp Objects, Lift and Separate, and now this latest book, Crazy to Leave You. Lisa Barr, who is a friend of the Streicker Center, who will be with us pretty soon, has said, your genius lies in your keen observations and ability to expose family dysfunction at its best, which I thought was absolutely on target. So Marilyn, tell us a little bit about this book.
Well, first, hi, everybody.
Yes, welcome.
And I want to tell you that I've been researching this book my entire life because it is about a scale-obsessed, voila, advertising executive. I owned an advertising agency for 25 years from the most dysfunctional Jewish family in America, with the exception of my own. She is left at the altar at 41, having everything that she ever wanted in life, except walking down the aisle and having a family and making her life into what she had always dreamed of. Although she already has great success and many friends and plenty of relatives to give her advice that she would rather not have. To come up with it, I looked deep into my refrigerator. I took out the Dr. Brown's Diet Cream, and I came up with Lauren Leo.
Yes, and she's perfect. And that is really why I obviously thought to pair the both of you because, of course, your books have some similarity. There's a lot of Judaism in them. There's a lot that we can all relate to. So we're going to flip back and forth a little bit and talk about all your characters. So let's go back to Susan for a moment. So Corey, she marries this man, Josh, who you would think is the perfect man, when his first wife, Dawn, dies suddenly during a Pilates session, which is so specific and actually so funny. And she leaves this nice little daughter, Eliza, I think her name is, and Corey ends up adopting her, and everything seems to be terrific. Now, Corey is now a stepmother, so a couple of questions. One, did you research that stepmother-stepdaughter relationship? That's one.
For sure.
Yes, let's talk about that.
I research everything,
of course,
practically. As much as I can, I talk to people in that situation, et cetera. But she's not really a stepmother because she adopts her. She becomes her mother.
All right.
And that to me is a key. And she loves this kid. This is not, the typical 14-year-old because she's still pleasant. And, but the trick in researching is, as my mom could say, don't let your index cards show. Don't show your notes. The reader should not be aware that you've researched it. It's for you, not for them.
Wow, I didn't know that. So we'll go to you for another moment. So Corey, she's a little bored in the suburbs. She has this wonderful life. She goes on a weekly lunch date with a group of people, and her old instincts kind of kick in. She watches another patron at the diner.
Yeah, the title, Takes One to Know One,
right,
really is the key to that, because she's been undercover. Nobody there in town, her Long Island town, knows she was in the FBI. They don't know. And certainly working anti-terrorism, you don't go out and wear a Federal Bureau of Investigation T-shirt. But she senses somebody is keeping one of the members of the group. There's something that just doesn't sit right with her. And just out of boredom and a need to, use her antennae a little bit, she starts to look into this person.
But what is it? He looks the other way out the window?
No, he's just doing, yes, he does look, oh, thank you. He does look out, and he's constantly looking at his car, which is in a parking lot across the street. He keeps changing phones, which is something that drug dealers used to do. It's no longer necessary. I really learned about committing crimes with but he does that, and he does a few other things that are just so not right, including his lack of openness, his lack of being casual, and he forces being friendly. And she senses all that because she's a trained, not only investigator, she's the one who sits in the room and interrogates suspects.
Right, so she knows.
She knows. And so she starts to look into his life.
Takes one to know one. So now we can talk about the two protagonists together. So you have Corey Geller,
right?
Geller, and she's 35, and she finally meets the man of her dreams, is Josh, his widower. And you have Lauren Leo, who I guess she meets her at 30. She meets Eric at 39 at a camp reunion. She kissed him behind the bunk when she was a kid, and now this is really adorable. And now she meets him again at a camp reunion, and he's the perfect man. So what happens over here to our girl on this side?
Well, like I said, her life is going really well. She meets him at a camp reunion, and
good setup.
And she like you said, kissed him behind a bunk at a camp named after a rabbi, and had to be bunk 8 because that was the only bunk that wasn't taken. And when she got back to her bunk, her best friend, who's still her best friend at the time she's getting married, 41, is very, very popular. And Lauren was not so popular. And she was worried she was pregnant. And how was she going to tell her parents that she got pregnant from kissing this guy? Which is one of my favorite scenes in the book, is when she starts worrying about that. Anyway, she gets engaged. She realizes his parents are overbearing. He's an only child. He's doing whatever his mother's telling him to do. And he gets away with it all by telling her that his mother is an event planner. But what Lauren didn't realize is that his mother was also a dictator. So as she's about to walk down the aisle, and mind you, she has dieted down to a size 12 since getting engaged. And she's so proud of herself that she's thinking of actually wearing the size tag down the aisle instead of her wedding gown.
That's funny.
And her sister gets a text message that he has decided he doesn't want to get married while she's waiting in the bridal suite. And her first impression is to run into the chapel of the synagogue and be the person who tells this to everyone. But the closer she gets to the chapel door, the more she's thinking, maybe not, and runs off and runs across the boulevard to sit in a diner and watch everybody leave her wedding. She then has to, following this, pick herself up and decide what to do with her life. Like, what does she want? Because obviously the man thing was totally not working out. And that's the story. The story is her changing her life, her standing up for herself, her having a self-identity, especially after coming from a family where her mother is a size 4 body shamer.
Right. So that brings us to talking about weight and females and body image. Now, throughout your book, Marilyn, weight is a big factor.
Big weight factor. Yeah.
Big. Expand. So is this something that you think about, I assume? And it seems to run through your books, right?
No, this is really the first book where there are, obviously people with eating problems. All my characters love to eat, but this is the first book where it's become a problem. She is obsessed with the scale. Before she weighs herself, she takes off her contact lenses. She will not start a diet on any day but a Monday. I don't know if anybody else out there. Well, I know I won't start on a Monday. I won't even start Monday afternoon.
Well, then how did you get that thought that she'll only start it? Oh, any day but a Monday she starts.
Yeah, because I do it myself. I can't start in the middle of the week. That's ridiculous. So
after the weekend, of course.
Yes, of course. And so she's obsessed with the scale, but unlike my own upbringing, in which I was in a heavy-set family, she has a size 4 mother who shops in a store called 4. And when Eric, who is the fiance, leaves and she's sitting in the diner, and in revenge for what has happened to her, eating everything that you could possibly ever want in a diner, she asked her mother for advice, and her mother said, freeze your eggs and stay on your diet. And that's the kind of advice she's been getting her whole life. So in this book, she has to stand up against her family, which also includes her sister, who is a fading soap opera star who lands up on her couch the day after the wedding. Not the day. She doesn't come to the wedding, but she shows up the next day to land on the couch.
And heavy. And now the sister is not thin any longer.
No, that's why she lost the job.
Right.
She's been killed 3 times. So, and then the other sister, who's a perfect person, is the way Lauren sees it, has everything Lauren dreamed of, including a waist thin enough to wear a big belt at the wedding, And the mother thinks the sister is fabulous. The son-in-law is fabulous. And Lauren thinks they're fabulous until in this story, she finds out maybe, they're not so fabulous.
So right. And that's what's interesting. So both of your books have a lot of very specific Jewish women characters, I think, that we can all relate to, a lot of them. And so let's talk about how Judaism plays a part really in your, not just your lives, of course, but in your books. And Susan, we'll go with you.
Oh, okay. In my life, it's certainly part of my life. I grew up in a completely unobservant house, but it was in Brooklyn. So, by osmosis, I got some of it, and then proceeded to go out with every WASP in the outer boroughs. And then sometime around when I began looking for a husband, I found I was dating Jewish guys. So, and my husband, we've been married many, many decades, thousands of decades, came from a kind of conservative family. And I learned so much, but also more than that, besides what I learned too that it was comforting to be part of the community. A writer, many artists of all sorts are outsiders, but you don't have to, wear a big O on your head and be perpetually. There are times that it's wonderful to be part of a group, whether to love it or to criticize it, but it's my identity. So most of my characters are Jewish or have Jewish roots. One in a novella I wrote is not, because I wanted to see, I just wanted the challenge, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful creating a Congregationalist. But Corey comes from, her dad is a cop or was a retired cop. A mother, is a former soap opera star, and but takes her acting very seriously. And they both come from traditional lower middle class Jewish families, and I found that very comfortable. And her husband is much more upper class, federal district judge, former U.S. attorney in the Southern District. He also is Jewish. So she's surrounded by Jews, yet she's, in law enforcement where she meets everybody, and she's an Arabic speaker.
Yeah.
And loves the culture, hates the terrorists. So she's an interesting dame. That's why I wanted to stick with her.
I love how she found the perfect Jewish husband somewhere in her mid-30s. And Lauren Leo found what we thought was the perfect Jewish husband at 39. And let's talk a little bit about your Judaism and your stories. Marilyn.
What makes you think I'm Jewish? No.
It's hard to tell.
It's difficult. And don't accuse me of being from New York. I'm from Queens.
Some of the names in there, Rothstein.
Yeah, I don't know. I married into that. I grew up Orthodox, and I grew up in a neighborhood of many, many Orthodox people. I was almost the only family on my street that didn't attend a yeshiva. I attended PS 173, Fresh Meadows, in case anyone out there knows. And Judaism has always been really important to me. Because I was Orthodox, I couldn't be bat mitzvahed, because the year of my bat mitzvah, 1990, just kidding, Orthodox.
Now I got it.
Very few girls were bat mitzvahed. So when I was 43, I went to my synagogue in Connecticut and became a bat mitzvah because I wanted to read from the Torah.
Nice.
And I consider it one of the highlights of my life. As far as the background of Lauren Leo, she has a lot of the kind of background that I came from and hold very dear to me.
Right. So the first line of both of your books are fascinating. So Crazy to Leave You, the first line is diets consumed me. And you set it up so we can talk about, I guess, Jewish girls and dieting. Is that accurate? Or weight,
yes,
or body
all
image?
All girls in dieting.
All girls. Well, all girls in dieting.
Girls in dieting.
And Susan, your first line last night is amazing. Last night I dreamed I was on Queens Boulevard again, which of course is an homage to Rebecca. And that just pulls you into that story. So tell us a little how you came around with that.
I was thinking of how do I begin this, because I'm not only beginning Takes One to Know One, I'm beginning a series of books about Corey Geller.
Right.
And I thought, what are the great opening lines? And, I looked through my library and there was, Rebecca and, talking about dreaming about being back at Manderley. And I thought, hey, what am I going to write about? Last night I dreamed about crossing Queens Boulevard. And yeah, why not?
It's funny. I mean, it really is very funny. I think what attracts me to both of your stories, and probably a lot of people like me, is that, again, they're so familiar and they're everything we know about. Sleepaway Camp, let's say Queens Boulevard, Long Island, diners, dieting, mothers, but they become universal as well. I mean, you get wide audiences.
Yeah, I mean, when your book starts to be translated into Bulgarian or Japanese, you figure it's not your relatives.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so Susan, your characters are very lovable, every one of them, except you put them in extreme danger. Corey. Mm-hmm. I was a little worried about her.
I know. So was I. I think that's how. But she's able to protect herself, you see, or defend herself,
right? If
if not protect herself, because she winds up in a really hairy situation because she's trained. She's trained as an FBI agent. And when she was 12 or 13, her dad, the cop, the detective, took her to learn Krav Maga, which is the martial art that the IDF in Israel teaches its recruits. So she's not going into it as, the typical heroine in older books, being the, innocent virgin with long eyelashes. She knows the ropes,
right?
But, it's still danger. Women like adventure. Some women really put themselves right into it, and some people march for it, and other people like to read about it or write about it.
Both of the mothers in this book are very similar. They're a little bit disconnected. Both of them a little bit. They have a similar. I don't know if you've read each other's books, but they have a little bit of a similarity. I was noticing. So a few things. So growing up, well, actually, let's talk about this. Both of you have something in common. I think, do you both know that you worked at 17 Magazine as a first job?
Yes.
So let's go to that.
Ask me anything you want about a pimple.
So what Marilyn, what did you do? What did you do at 17?
Was
that your first job?
Can't you look at my face? I wrote Dear Beauty Editor. Never believe a word you read in a magazine again.
You wrote Dear
Beauty Editor. I wrote fashion, food, home. My first article I ever got a chance to write was called Ribbon Flowers, and it was about how to make flowers out of ribbons. And I just want you to know that I have no craft talent whatsoever. And they gave me that assignment. It was my first crack. I took it home and worked on it every night for a week. And I still can't believe someone could actually make something out of the instructions I wrote for the Ribbon Flowers. But the Ribbon Flowers got me my start.
And what was your job there, Susan?
My job initially was writing advice to the lovelorn under the house name of Abigail Wood.
That's excellent.
And so, some of them, the letters were hilarious and some of them were poignant. And there was a psychiatrist we could call up if there was ever anything serious. But then 17 at that point was writing articles like how to say no to a boy. Like that was a whole new idea that certainly has having its time now. But I became ultimately a senior editor of articles directly about teens and by teens. So I did that. And then my husband was in the U.S. Attorney's Office at the time, working crazy hours late at night. So at night, I volunteered at a political campaign and ultimately had a separate gig as a political speechwriter, which is how I learned about voice. Because all the politicians, New York polls, wanted to sound like JFK. And I had to say to them, look, you're not John Kennedy, but I'm not Theodore Sorensen, the speechwriter.
Right.
So let's do the best we can with what we have. And I learned that there's a difference between mostly Democrats, but a Puerto Rican from the Bronx, someone Irish from Queens, someone old line German Jewish from Manhattan. And I had a great time.
Do you think you were there overlapping years?
No, I think I'm older. It pains me, but yes, it's true. We exchanged notes.
So when you were Susan was there about a week before me.
Yeah.
So did you both know that you were going to be authors as you grew up? Were you big readers as kids?
I was a great reader.
Right.
And we didn't get a TV till I was about 10, which turned out to be an advantage. I was an only child, which is another reason. And I didn't know I wanted to be an author. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a cowgirl, which is practical when you come from Flatbush.
Right.
And after that, I thought I would be a doctor. I didn't so much, I was interested in science. I didn't so much want to be a doctor as I wanted to be something. And I remember at one point saying to my father, hey, I'd like to, I think maybe I would like to be a stewardess, which was the word at that time. And he said to me, why be a stewardess? You can be the pilot. And that was so rare in those days. So I didn't know that I was going to be an author till I got the job at 17 because I had worked on my college paper. And it was the only job I was offered at an agency. And so I said, okay.
And how about you, Marilyn? Did you? Well, you started a little bit later. Your first book was published 4 years ago, is it?
My first book was published when I was 63 years old,
Great.
which is amazing because I'm only 32. So I can't no explaining that.
In the future.
And in fact, when I didn't want my picture on the book, but I had to take an author's picture because, just used for publicity. And when I took it, I realized it was going to be my first and last author's picture because at 63, how much younger was I going to look the next time, right? So I've been using that picture now for 6 years, and that picture will never change. I knew I wanted to be a writer, like I was born holding a pen, okay? And I have to give Susan credit because when I read Compromising Positions, I thought to myself, wow, this is someone else from Queens who's Jewish, who's writing about things I understand. And I had gotten that feeling from Philip Roth, Philip Roth wasn't a woman, obviously.
Right.
And she so inspired me that the idea, like I could do it because this person named Susan Isaacs did it. Right. So when you got in touch with me that I was going to speak with Susan, I took out all of her books, which I had already read, but the only one I didn't have was
Jewish. Aren't you nice?
And I've been plugging it all over Facebook, Susan. And so I have to say that I'm sitting here with an inspiration.
Oh, it is
I'm
nice.
honored. I'm honored.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say I started Marilyn's book this past weekend, and in between yams, and it's delicious and true. Yeah. It's so true, even though it's fiction.
So, Susan, let's talk about Compromising Positions. That was your very first book. You wrote it when your kids were little. I think it was a Book of the Month Club book back then. Yeah. Sold to the movies, translated to 30 languages. So what was that like for you? The best.
It was unbelievable. But it, on one hand, because suddenly, I had left 17 and was freelancing magazine articles, politicals, but I was basically raising my kids. I was a housewife. We had moved to the suburbs, and suddenly I had a career. And it was a career where I didn't worry if the kid had 103 temperature. I didn't have to think, do I stay or do I go? I could give myself the day off. It was ideal for me also because I can be very social, but I'm more introverted than extroverted. So working alone, sitting alone in a room, telling myself stories suited my personality. But it wasn't, I wasn't hanging around in really cool bars with a bunch of other authors. I certainly got to know them and became very active in, authordom. But as I was president of Mystery Writers America. I was chair of the board of poets and writers for many years. But I still lived in the suburbs, and the conversation was not about, hey, what's your work in progress? It was, how are the kids? What are you doing? It was about
who's in Little
anything,
League, right?
Anything from what day do you start a diet to politics.
Right. So do you both still write at home? What's your process like? And do you have more ideas ahead of you? Have you scrapped ideas? How does that all work?
Val?
I like to write in libraries the most.
To get out of the house a little bit.
Yeah. And I love my local library, Avon Public Library in Avon, Connecticut, and which is outside of Hartford because they wouldn't let us into Hartford. And I also love when I'm in New York, going to the Library of the Arts at Lincoln Center and going to 42nd Street. And those would be like my absolutely favorite places to write. I write in my house a lot. I have an office, but I use it as a storage room. Like you can barely get in there. And it's also the guest room, so it's pretty hopeless. So I have an office, but I love to write at my kitchen table. I'm just like a kitchen table was the way I was brought up. Everything happened around our kitchen table in Queens, and now the writing happens at the kitchen table in Connecticut.
So it's actually the same for both of you. I think all your books are fabulous, but even at this stage, well, particularly Susan with so many books, is there worry with each and every one? I mean, will another idea come? Will the next one be as good as the previous ones, or not?
Yes.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Still, even though you are tried and true.
I know I have behind me a whole, my 15th book is coming out in May. Can I show you the jacket?
It's a great title.
Sort of what it's going to look like, but it's still a work in progress. But the book is in. It's been in for ages. Yes, because every book is a new thought, a new set of characters. You can't go on, at least I can't go on automatic pilot, and it's a process, and at the end of the day, I like having written more than I enjoy the actual writing. I think some of that has to do, though, with when the writing is coming, the psychologists call it flow,
right?
A state of, I'm not conscious of myself, so that it's just going. But when I can't write, when I'm looking at the screen and nothing's happening, or what's happening is really unpleasant and something I'd rather not read, then it's awful. But every job is tough. Your job is tough. A fourth grade teacher's job is tough.
That's for sure.
And a neurosurgeon's job is tough. So there you go.
So that brings us into a few questions. So let's see. Abby said, this is such a wonderful pairing, two of my favorite authors. So excited that Susan's sequel, Takes One to Know One, is coming out in the spring. Well, we just saw the title, but tell us the theme.
Bad Seymour Brown. It's about, because they worked a bit together in Takes One to Know One, she and her dad, the retired NYPD cop, joined together when one of his cold cases 20 years earlier becomes suddenly active again. There was a horrible murder of a money launderer, and one person survived, which was their little 5-year-old daughter. And the 5-year-old daughter, he and she sent holiday cards to each other. But she went on, she becomes, gets her PhD in film, and she texts him and says, I think somebody tried to kill me. And the police are looking into it, but I think it may have something to do with my parents. And so Corey's dad and Corey take on the case.
Is Corey still happy with Josh? Or
yeah, reasonably.
Okay.
I mean, listen, there's an ATF guy, no, a DEA guy that she'd always been in love with, but it was impossible. He was always going undercover to South America, to deal with the drug dealers down there. And he was also Arabic speaking, but he was Muslim. So she knows it's not going to be. But yes, she loves Josh, but Josh is brilliant, Harvard, good family, lovely manners, pretty good in bed, but a little bit of a snore.
I might have missed it. How did they meet? Did
you
mention it?
She and Josh?
Yes.
Yeah, they met at a party. Josh, having been a former U.S. attorney, was invited to the retirement party of some high up in the FBI, and she was invited. And they met at the retirement party, which was a bar, and it clicked.
I actually missed that for whatever reason. So if you were starting out now, Susan's for Susan, because Marilyn, you really started out only a few years ago in this field. Mm-hmm. Is it harder today? I mean, you wrote Compromising Positions. Was it like that? You got in, you found an agent, you were done?
It's never been easy to find, it's always takes, it is so much harder now because back then there were books and there was TV if you wanted to. Right. There were movies, but I knew, even though I've written the screenplay of 2 movies that were produced, were made.
Which ones?
Compromising Positions with Susan Sarandon, Raul Julia, et cetera, and an original called Hello Again with Shelley Long and a guy whose name I keep forgetting because I don't like him. But anyway,
we won't say his name.
It was collaborative. It was nice. It was like going to camp. It was fun, and I got to be on the set. And screenwriters are not often, but basically I'm a novelist, and I want to be writing alone. It's so hard now to find an agent, because there are other forms. There's everybody's streaming everything.
Right.
And there's so much narration and great stories. I mean, some of the stuff on TV is brilliant. So it's not that you're lowering yourself. It's just there's a great deal of competition.
Right.
I think some readers came back during COVID, and others are still watching The White Lotus, and as I am. People, but it's still there. Is it hard? Yes. Can it be done? Yes, but it's tougher.
Well, that's the question. Do you find a big change in the publishing world? I mean, the publishing had a huge, it took off during COVID. It was better than ever.
Right. I find that, yes, there's a difference, but I'm at Grove Atlantic Monthly Press, and it's a smaller house than the Giants, where I've been at HarperCollins. I was at Scribner, which is part of Simon & Schuster. I am so happy here because there are people who actually edit my books. They're still thinking about the cover, the jacket, the book jacket. Right. and the copy editing on my book was so thorough. And you read books today, you keep saying, even if you're not a grammarian, you say, gee, shouldn't there be a question mark there instead of a period? And so they've let go so many employees, they don't have enough to cover what used to be the standard. But you can't, listen, it's changed, okay? So you either whine about it or accept the change. So there it is.
Marilyn, how did you start it?
How did I start? Well, I've been writing my whole life. I owned an advertising agency here in Connecticut for over 25 years. And I started the agency as a copywriter. That was my background after 17. And I did not know any agents. I think I knew 2 authors who I knew through my writers group. I didn't know them as friends. I'm out here in, suburbia. And it took, it's funny. I wrote a book about 30 years ago, sent it out to 5 agents, and someone took it immediately. So I thought that's how it works, except then she didn't get it published. But, everybody said you cannot get an agent. And I had an agent in 5 days, and I was like, So then all these years go by, and I decide that what I really want to do is write a book, and I'm going to get out of advertising and just write full time. And the goal this time is to publish the book. Well, I send the book when it's finished out, and I didn't get an agent in 5 days this time. In fact, I didn't get an agent for a whole year. So, it is really tough. Very, very, very tough. I'm very lucky to have found the agent that I have. She's wonderful. But for anyone out there, all I can say is just keep trying. Don't give up.
I have a friend who just wrote a book, and it's fabulous, and it's been rejected everywhere. So and it's a very good book. And I read other books that aren't quite as good. But right. But I think she finally is finding a home somewhere. By the way, there's a very cute comment. Weismeer, how could I not love this interview? I think that was kind of cute.
And I say, Oigewalt.
Oh, well, Oigewalt, they were all going to love. This is a hard question. What do you read today? Who else do you like? And what did you read as a child? I'll start. I like your books. I like Jennifer Weiner. Is that the type of books you like to read?
I love her work. I love Jennifer's work. And I also read a wonderful novel recently called The Latecomer.
Oh, fabulous.
Wonderful.
Isn't that great, Jean?
Mm-hmm. Fabulous. Jean Ham Corliss.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And I'm going to be reading another one, but I also read mysteries, science fiction, and a lot of nonfiction, just because I'm curious. And then, having been in politics for the years that I was a speechwriter, I've, stayed true. My second novel, Close Relations, was in 1980, was about a political speechwriter. And the publisher said to me, well, we're publishing this, but women don't want to read about politics. And so I said, it's about politics, but family politics and ethnic politics. And, and I just, I look back and I'm sorry I even made excuses. Because it was a nice book, so that's who I read. I read. I felt so awful when Hilary Mantel died,
right?
And she wrote a wonderful memoir called "Giving Up the Ghost," which should be read. And I I'm reading. I'm taking for this winter. I have a biography of Maimonides that, if I can lift it, I'll read it.
I like to read fiction, memoir, and history of things that I'm interested in. And when I was a kid, on Saturday, I would go to the library on 164th and Jewel Avenue. Got that, Susan?
Yeah, I got it.
And you were allowed to take out 10 books. And I would take out the 10 books and go back to my house and sit down in the living room and not move. And my mother would keep saying, you keep sitting like that and you're going to be round-shouldered. And guess what? She's right. She's right. I'm round-shouldered, Mom.
I'm literate.
One of my favorite authors now that I wish I had when I was really little was Mo Willems, because I read his books to my grandchildren. And nice. When I ever read that thing in the New York Times where it says, what would people be surprised to find on your shelf? I would say they would be surprised to find every single Elephant and Piggy book that he has ever written.
That's great. Well, a couple of comments from the crowd. Natalie says, Marilyn, I still live in Fresh Meadows, 6 blocks from PS 173. It's a very changed neighborhood. Russian, Jewish, and Asian families building McMansions. I'm a member of Young Israel and Hillcrest Jewish Center, and both suffer a decline in membership. And she loves both of you, are both authors' novels.
I have to tell you, I went to Young Israel to go to Hebrew school, and then we switched to Hillcrest because my sister wanted a bat mitzvah, and it was a conservative shul. So whoever it is out there, I know where you are.
And of course, we can't have an interview like this and not discuss the word Florida or Boca. So how will you celebrate how do you celebrate when you finish writing one of your books? And will either of you or both of you be coming to Boca to speak?
I indubitably, because we have a place on Key Biscayne.
I remember just talking to you about that one.
And so certainly Miami has Books and Books, which is, I think, the best bookstore in the country.
It is.
But it's fabulous. But I will be in Boca, and I'll really do, I love to do Southeast Florida, just almost go up the coast.
Right.
But I do intend to be there in May sometime. Or, I'm coming back for Passover, but then I'll go back to Florida.
Are you friends with other authors? The two of you? Do you have authors?
Oh, no, I wouldn't make friends with an author. Never. No.
Yes.
No? You
they're horrible. I just want to say that I go to Boca and I have legitimate, what do you call it in Boca? Because my dad lived in Century Village, Boca, may he rest in peace. And if I have no shame, so if anybody wants to invite me to Boca or Miami or any place to speak, I am there. As fast as you can say American Airlines.
Okay. If everybody's listening to that, I hope. Actually, this reminds me of a quick funny story of something you said earlier. About a year ago, Hilma Wolitzer was with us, and Hilma and Meg together. I'm sure I'm sure everybody knows them. Yeah. And Hilma tells the funniest story that when she was a young girl in 4th grade, she used to like to write, and her report card said, Hilma is a great writer. And she brought that home and said to her parents, you see, I'm a great writer. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you heard the story. And then eventually, when she was more of an adult, met the teacher and said, you inspired me. You told me I was a great writer. She said, Hilma, I told that to all the kids. But she took it to heart.
and the teacher was right in her case.
Well, the teacher was right in her case. Well, first of all, the two of you are terrific. I love your books. I've loved all 17 of your books, and I look forward to everything else. And the only thing I want to ask you, is there anything we missed? Is there anything you would like to mention, tell the crowd, anything you wish you were asked?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Good. Well, I hope everybody looks on the side and picks up these books. If you haven't already, the link actually goes directly to Books and Books, which is our bookstore partner that we use in Florida. They supply most of our books. And if you're watching tonight at the Streicker Center, we have Jerry Seinfeld, another New York / Long Island Jew with us. So that should be a lot of fun. Well, next week in this exact spot, Danny Shapiro will be with us. So I hope everybody watches. And thank you, Marilyn, and thank you, Susan. And it was great.
Thank you, Marjorie.
You're very welcome. Good Thanksgiving to everyone, and we'll see you again.
Bye.